Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Alyeska Pipeline Service Company, fueling philanthropic programs and dedicated to creating educational and professional opportunities for Alaska Native people.
The National Weather Service.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us tonight on Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Mike Ottenweiler, and tonight is Tuesday, March 29th, 2016. And as always, you can stay up to date with us on our website, arh.noaa.gov. That stands for Alaska Regional Headquarters. Our weather info line is 1-800-472-0391. That is 24/7 access to the forecasters. And again, weather.gov/Alaska will bring you to the same information. You can find us on Facebook using NWS Alaska for all three offices. Find us on Twitter at NWS Alaska, and you can use the hashtag AKwx to get a regional perspective. And then you can find this show and a few other weather segments on YouTube using the hashtag AKwxTV. So we have lots to talk about tonight, so I'm going to jump right in to the variety of things that are going on. Probably most of you by now have heard of the Pavlov eruption, and it is continuing to subside today. Much less activity this afternoon as opposed to Monday afternoon when things were quite active. So this is what we're looking at here is what's considered a SIGMET or a significant meteorological advisory from the aviation office inside of our weather forecast office. And what this is showing us is that as of this afternoon, this is just about 3 o'clock this afternoon, we can see the ash was at about 30,000 feet or so, moving off to the northeast, and then later on this evening forecasted to be further off to the northeast. And as you can see here in the wording, the volcanic ash becoming discontinuous within warned area and will move off into Canada. So the eruptions have slowed and come to a much lower level. Seismic activity has decreased today, so we're not expecting much in the way of impacts from this going forward unless we should see another eruption. As for our standard hazards with our warnings, watches, and advisories, we do have several to talk about as a warm front is going to swing plenty of moisture up into the Alaska Range and then spill over into the interior. So we have a winter storm warning out for the Glen Allen, or north of Glen Allen in the Northway area, and that is going to be in effect until 4 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. And check your local office there up at Fairbanks to see the exact details with that one. These are winter weather advisories up for the interior, including the Fairbanks area, and those are also going to be in effect from Wednesday into Thursday. And these are winter weather watches that will be from Wednesday afternoon into Thursday afternoon. Timing of each of these will be slightly variable as the front swings from the southeast to the northwest. So again, check with your local office to see the exact details of each of those hazards. And now let's take a look at our satellite loop. And as you can see here, we do have a plume of moisture riding up with that warm front. And with that, we expect the rain to start very shortly at Kodiak Island if it hasn't already begun in the last few hours. And near Yakutat and places for the northern portion of the Panhandle, we have seen some moderate rain this afternoon. Fog has been in the forecast and is continuing to plague areas around the Portage Glacier as this warm air mass moves northward. And this is really going to be the story going into the next couple days. This area of low pressure down here in the North Pacific, we'll loop that again just to show that to you. Down there in the North Pacific is continuing to spin up that moisture and push that warm surge of air across much of southern Alaska, and it will slide its way into southeast Alaska as well, and eventually work its way up into the interior portions of the state. High pressure over the northern portions of the state, so while the IR imagery picking up some of the clouds and ice pack, it's actually been a fairly nice day for much of the northern portion of the state, north of the Brooks Range, and even portions of the interior as well. And then off over towards the Bering Sea here, you can see Our ice pack, again, is causing the satellite to think it's actually clouds, but it's just cold ice. And there's snow showers that continue to move from northeast to southwest around this area of low pressure and another area of high pressure off the Gulf of Anadyr. And so with that, we have northeasterly flow spinning around and causing some snow showers once that cold air from the ice moves over the warmer waters of the Bering. And then a weak area of low pressure out over the western Aleutians, and that continues to spin its way into dissipation and just bringing some light rain and snow showers out for the western Aleutians. Let's take a look at our weather map for this afternoon, starting over southeast Alaska. A fairly nice day for much of the southern portions of southeast Alaska. It was only right along the northern tier, Chilkoot and White Pass, and up towards Yakutat where we saw that rainfall really begin in earnest there, with some moderate rain reported this afternoon. As we get towards southern Alaska, we can see that warm front is just on the doorstep now of the coastal areas. Seward will probably start to see rain here within the hour, as well as Portage, Whittier. They will definitely see some rain start in the overnight hours. And this is associated with this area of low pressure at about 987 millibars down there in the North Pacific, and that will bring plenty of warm air. We'll also see some southeasterly winds begin to start to blow through some of the passes here along the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutian Range as we start to pinch the gradient between the high pressure up over the northwest portion of the state and low pressure there in the Gulf of Alaska. Off of the Bristol Bay coastline and out into the Bering Sea, there you can see that northeast flow helping to create some of those snow showers there from Cape New and Ham stretching out into the central Aleutians. And it's not until you get all the way out into the western Aleutians that there's enough warm air to cause some of that snow to mix with a little bit of rain out there. Taking a look towards the interior portions of the state, just some patchy fog and light rain showers in the forecast for or in the observations this afternoon for the Alaska Range, and some light snow as you get north of the Alaska Range. High pressure, though, is keeping things fairly quiet for much of the northern portion of the state, to include the Brooks Range and the Beaufort Sea coast. Now on into tonight's forecast, you can see plenty of moisture is going to be riding up with this system and plenty of warm air. So the one thing to note here is this area of pink, which is the mixed precipitation on this map. It's going to be a fairly narrow area, but it will be just in front of this warm front. And we expect the warm front to transition things pretty quickly from snow over to rain. But in that transition area, that's where you'll need to watch out for that mixed precipitation type. Some of those lower lying valleys that trap the colder air could see a bit of a mixed precip to include some freezing rain. So be careful if you're traveling in those areas that the sidewalks, roadways could become slippery in that narrow band. Don't expect it to be a long-lived event by any means, as this warm air should quickly replace that colder air throughout much of the area. And then over the northern portion of the state, again, high pressure and control, keeping things quite clear and quiet up there. Snow showers over the Aleutians and just some rain and snow mix as you get out well to the southwest of the western Aleutians. Rain will continue for much of the southeast portion of the state, to include the northern panhandle, Yakutat, and areas there. But we do see high pressure starting to build in tonight, and this will become the dominant feature as we go into Wednesday. It's at 1,027 millibars and will help to push some of that dry air and keep this front moving off to the west. And so we should see things clear for southeast Alaska rather quickly on Wednesday. Over southern Alaska, again, we'll stay very wet and start to become even warmer than we have been. Even though we've been above normal, this will keep us well above normal and very wet. We do expect some moderate rain possibly into the Alaska Range. And there again, you can see those isobars. That's the lines of constant pressure between this area of high pressure and this area of low pressure, feeding into that southeasterly flow, which really favors some of those gaps near Lake Iliamna. And with that, we do expect some gusty winds through those areas. Again, keep note of that area of mixed precipitation right along the frontal band there. And then we do expect an area of low pressure to develop over the eastern portion of the state, and that's where those advisories and those warnings will be problematic and take effect as that area of low pressure develops and just basically keeps the moisture spinning through this region. As you get on the backside of the system, we do see things change to all snow, keeping some gusty northeasterly winds. Gusterly is another way to say that. Northeasterly winds through Cold Bay and Dutch Harbor. And then out towards the Aleutians, we do expect snow showers to continue with that northeast flow off the ice pack. Over on into Thursday now, we do see things continuing to clear over southeast Alaska. Should be a nice day for much of those regions. Could start out with some patchy fog, especially in Chilkoot and White Passes. We do expect that high pressure to start to dry things out over south central and the Copper River Basin as well. So some patchy fog expected Thursday morning. Should burn off by the afternoon, but keep that in mind if you're traveling in those areas. And then again, we have our band of precipitation that just really lingers along the stationary boundary into Thursday, and thus the advisories and the warnings once again. The warm front now is pushing off into the Bering Sea, helping to start to bring the rain to an end for much of the Bristol Bay areas, and we'll just see that rain-snow mix again continuing out in front of that warm front before it becomes all snow for the western Aleutians. Things should remain relatively dry over the Arctic coast, but we do expect that northeasterly flow to really pick up through those areas as the gradient starts to pinch between that area of high pressure and this lower pressure here over the southern portion of the state. So be advised the winds will probably be on the increase through the latter portion of the week. Taking a look at our temperatures now, we did have temperatures in the in the mid 40s for highs for much of southeast Alaska. Even saw some low 50s as you got towards the southern part of the Panhandle. Up towards Cordova, 45 degrees this afternoon at 4 p.m., 45 as well at Middleton Island, and then low to mid 40s for much of the Cook Inlet region, and we saw some upper 30s as you got up towards the Susitna Valley. Off into the northern portion of the state now. For the interiors, much of the area was above freezing in the mid to upper 30s, and that wasn't until you got to the Brooks Range that we saw temperatures topping out in the teens to maybe low 20s, and then along the Arctic Sea coast, or the Beaufort Sea coast, we had temperatures pretty cold up there with that high pressure in charge, -10 to -20 for much of the area. Seward Peninsula was anywhere between 0 and about 15 degrees. And then out over southwest Alaska, we saw temperatures mainly near 20 to 30 degrees for the afternoon highs. A little bit warmer as you got further south and towards the waters there. 42 degrees at King Salmon and 38 degrees at Dutch Harbor. Taking a look at tonight's low temperatures, we do once again see overnight lows getting into the upper 30s and low 40s for much of southeast Alaska. It'll be a little bit warmer towards south central Alaska with lows near 40 degrees for Cordova area. And then we do have a rain-snow mix expected for much of the Valdez area at 34 degrees, especially the higher elevations definitely could pick up some snow with this system. And mainly low 30s to mid 20s for much of the southern portion of the state. Not until you climb north of the Brooks Range do you see temperatures really get anywhere near 0 or below 0 for tonight's low temperatures along the Arctic coast, somewhere between -15 and -25 degrees. Over the Seward Peninsula, anywhere between 0 and -10, and for southwest Alaska, somewhere in the 20s to low 30s should be your overnight low temperatures. As you get over the Alaska Peninsula, expect Cold Bay to be at 34 degrees and out towards Shimia 33 degrees with 20 for the low at St. Paul. For tomorrow's high temperatures, again with high pressure and sunny skies starting to develop over the southern portion, we do see temperatures climbing all the way into the low 60s for the southern portion of the Panhandle, only into the upper 40s for Yakutat as they are going to be under cloud cover and some heavy rain. And then over much of the southern portion of the state, we expect temperatures to top out in the 40s with abundant cloud cover. Up over the northern portion of the state, clear skies with some sunshine, but still keeping things quite chilly, anywhere between -5 and -15 degrees there near Barrow. And then out over southwest Alaska, expect temperatures in the upper 30s to low 40s for Bristol Bay. And then out of the Alaska Peninsula, we'll see low 40s as well. Taking a look at our flying weather now, we do have some pockets of IFR associated with this strong frontal system moving into the area. Definitely we'll see that in areas that favor the southeast flow and through some of our passages. And then we expect widespread MVFR all the way associated with the front up to the northeastern portion of the state and then back down into the Alaska Peninsula out into the eastern Aleutians. Some snow showers will help to keep things MVFR conditions out for the western Aleutians, and just some pockets of low stratus and blowing snow potential out over the northwestern portion of the state as that high starts to get a little bit stronger up there. And then tomorrow afternoon's IFR conditions will be mainly along the frontal boundary stretching from basically Fairbanks down through the Dillingham area and Cape Newingham, and then again southeasterly flow favoring some upslope conditions, creating lower ceilings on the southern side of the Alaska Peninsula. So taking a look at our passes now with that high pressure, Anaktuvik and Adigan will be VFR, visual flight rules. For Lake Clark and Merrill, we do expect them to start out IFR, should slowly improve as the front moves through to MVFR. Raining will be similar conditions there. Windy will also be instrument flight rules. Isabel, instrument flight rules throughout the day. We're looking for Mentasta to go from IFR to VFR as things should improve pretty quickly behind the front. Tanita will be IFR to MVFR. Portage should stay IFR throughout the day with all that moisture packed in there. And Chilkoot and White starting out as IFR, but then again clearing out with high pressure building into VFR conditions. So taking a look at our freezing levels now, as you'd expect with all this warm air surging up associated with that warm front, freezing levels near the surface from much of the western portions of Canada and then stretching back out over south central Alaska into southwest Alaska. but things climbing quickly to 2,000, 4,000, even up to 10,000 feet in the central portions of the Gulf there. So potential for rain, snow, again, will be very short-lived. Things should change quickly from snow to rain if you are south of the Alaska Range. And then with icing associated with that, our lower levels of icing will be out here where this colder air is continuing to drain off the ice pack. So above 2,000 feet for some light, isolated, moderate, and then between 4,000 and 10,000 feet right around that area of low pressure and that warm front, and between 4,000 and 10,000 feet up over the northeastern portions of the state associated with that warm front. Let's look at our winds now. We can see our jet stream continues to be well to the south of the Aleutian Islands at about 130 knots, coming around these two areas of low pressure, and this is really our anchor low here in the upper levels of the atmosphere. And then it drives back up at 140 knots, pretty strong jet, one of the strongest we've seen in a while, and coming up into the Alaska Peninsula there. So that's really helping to keep that warm front intact. And then it jumps over top of this ridge, kind of in a omega shape, if you will, and then down underneath this area of low pressure out over the western portion of the continental United States. So at about 135 knots there over western Canada. So 9,000-foot winds. Not too dissimilar to that. We have our area of high pressure that will start to build in tomorrow out over the eastern portion of the Gulf. So winds coming around that about 25 to 20 knots. Our strongest area will be between this high and this low, with southeasterly winds coming up into the Kodiak and Cook Inlet regions, about 55 knots there. And then we'll see generally northeasterly flow continuing through much of the eastern Bering and out towards the western Aleutians between 40 knots and 20 knots as you get further west. And then out over the mainland, things pretty quiet for areas of the interior northwards, but southeasterly winds 45 knots over the eastern portion of the state. And then again, very similar conditions at the 3,000-foot level, just expecting winds just to be a little bit lighter. That strongest corridor is going to be right there in the central portion of the Gulf between that high and that low. And with that, we do have turbulence, some occasional widespread moderate below 8,000 feet right in that corridor of the strongest winds. This may be a little generous. It should probably be even a smaller corridor, but then below 6,000 feet for a widespread area along the warm front there where those winds were stronger, and a few pockets in the passes below 6,000 feet. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with your marine forecast.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and joining me once again is Cindy Preller. She is the Tsunami Program Manager for the National Weather Service in Alaska region. Thanks for joining us again, Cindy.
Thank you, Dave.
We're talking about tsunami awareness and safety here in Alaska especially, and one of the things that has been one of your main focuses is the Tsunami Ready program. What is that, and how do Alaskans find out more?
Awesome. Yeah, Tsunami Ready is a National Weather Service hosted program in partnership with Storm Ready.
Okay.
And it is a program that we conduct with our partners in the state, but it's mostly community driven. So if a community wants to become Tsunami Ready, well, the first thing they need to do is get a hold of me or their local WCM at a weather forecast office or their tsunami team at the state level.
So, and this is something that's a NOAA grant, so there's money available to help encourage the preparedness at the local level there in the city or the village.
Yeah.
What are some of the places that have done this already?
Oh, our oldest Tsunami Ready city is Seward,
Good.
you know, but also Sitka, Homer, Valdez are the, you know, the main players, but we've got several Tsunami Ready communities that I'm very proud of. It takes several years to accomplish this. And so a few of the things that they do is the tsunami risk will be assessed by someone like me or another scientist will help find out, you know, really what their probability is. We'll create an inundation map, an evacuation map. They'll have a mitigation plan. We will set up some partnerships with the schools, make an evacuation shelter, and then they need to practice. But it is the city that owns the program, really. It's up to them. And many cities would like to have sirens, and so we help them get those, and, you know, and they practice, they have to practice.
Sure. So let's say I'm driving into a place like Seward that's tsunami ready. What are some of the things I should look for as maybe a visitor so I know maybe where I need to go or can be more aware of my tsunami risk?
Absolutely. The Tsunami Ready signage is really blatant. It's this, you know, blue and white curling wave sign, and there's different shapes of signs that'll show you if you are in the hazard zone or where the evacuation routes are and when you're out of shelter.
Okay. So this is a multi-step process that helps the residents be more aware of their own risk, but then also prepare for when that risk arrives.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, many communities sound their sirens daily. Some sound them weekly, you know, to make sure everybody knows what they mean. And there's often drills. We have an annual drill once a year. We have Tsunami Awareness Preparedness Week, and that's a good time for each community to do some exercising.
Okay. And is this a program that is unique to Alaska?
Absolutely not. It's national.
Okay.
And all over the country, you'll have the same signage, so it's consistent.
Good. So if I'm taking the kids to California, I should be able to see something familiar.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And you know, some communities hesitate because they think it'll discourage tourism. And so I would like to tell those communities that what they're actually doing is they're encouraging responsibility.
Sure.
The tsunami's going to happen.
Right.
And it's going to hit every coastline. So, you know, it's not about when, it'll be any time. So the fact that they're showing tourists that they are making steps to be prepared for this, I think would encourage people to want to stay there.
Right, and that would be no different than, say, you or I visiting the Midwest, where we know there's going to be really bad thunderstorms and maybe there's a risk for tornadoes. We're aware of that risk when we go there.
Absolutely. If I see a sign for a tornado shelter, I'm going to remember that.
Right, okay, all right. So we're just doing a better job of being more prepared with something that's bound to happen again.
I hope so.
Okay, very good. Where can people go again to learn more about the Tsunami Ready program here in Alaska?
Well, one, there is a Tsunami Ready website, so, you know, just Tsunami Ready,
Google
and that'll
Tsunami
get you
Ready.
there.
Okay.
And then probably the best person for people to contact is their warning coordination meteorologist at their local weather forecast office, which is Anchorage or Juneau, most likely.
Okay, all right. So most of the folks along the Bering Sea coast, again, are not at a huge risk for tsunamis at this
No,
point.
they don't need to worry about it.
Okay,
Thank
very
you.
good. But always learning to be prepared no matter where you are in Alaska, no matter what the risk, always a good step. And tsunami is a major player in that, as we well know from events like 1964.
Alaskans are resilient. I really believe in them.
Very good, very good. Well, Cindy, thank you so much for joining us again, and please make an effort to learn more about the Tsunami Ready program in your village and town if you haven't already. We'll be back with Cindy again next time to talk more about the Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer, Alaska. We actually have a group of geologists working for the National Weather Service, so scratch your head on that one and we'll join you next time. See you next time on Alaska Weather Packs.
Welcome back, and after that segment, we do want to let everyone know that we will be having a tsunami warning system test tomorrow morning at 10:15. That's Wednesday, March 30th at 10:15. The National Weather Service and the state of Alaska will test the tsunami warning system. You may see and hear alerts and sirens in your community and on the radio, and see a warning on TV just as if it were a real tsunami warning had been issued. So please take this opportunity to practice what you would do if there was a real tsunami warning for your area. And remember, this is Wednesday morning, tomorrow morning at 10:15, and as the gentleman there is exclaiming, chill, it's just a drill. And with that, we'll jump right into our marine forecast. For southeast Alaska tomorrow, we can see southeasterly winds up near Lynn Canal at about 15 knots, seas 3 feet, and then switching for the central and southern portions of the inner passageways to north and northwest, 15 to 20 knots, and seas 3 to 4 feet. Out over the open waters, a little bit of confused winds there around that area of high pressure developing, so 15 knots out of the southeast for the northern portions near Yakutat, becoming northwest and eventually northerly, 10 to 20 knots, and seas generally on the order of 10 feet. On into Thursday now, variable winds up near Lynn Canal, 10 knots and seas 2 feet, and north, then becoming southeast down by Dixon Entrance, 10 to 15 knots and seas 2 to 3 feet for the inner passageways. Out over the open waters, southeast easterly winds 15 knots around the high pressure and seas 8 to 9 feet, and then northwest up to near Yakutat, northwest 15 knots and seas 9 feet. For south central on Wednesday, expect some gustier winds right along the coast there with one of our barrier jets associated with that warm front. So right along the coast, higher gusts to about 30 knots, but otherwise east to southeast, 20 to 25 knots for Prince William Sound and the northern portion of the Gulf. And then becoming southeast, 20 to 30 knots down towards Kodiak Island. Seas will be on the order of 11 to 17 feet for the open waters. Out over the Cook Inlet, north winds becoming north and easterly, and with that 10 to 30 knots and seas building from 2 up to 10 feet as you get to the western Barren Islands there. On to Thursday now, mainly northeast, north, and easterly flow for much of the area as we see that warm front pass through the area. And with that, 20 to 35 knots, strongest just over the eastern Barren Islands, and seas generally 2 feet for Prince William Sound, but 11 to 13, 14 feet near Kodiak Island. And then northerly winds, 20 to 30 knots for the Cook Inlet region and into Shelikof Strait, seas between 6 and 9 feet. On into the Alaska Peninsula now, expecting the winds to go from the east for Bristol Bay at 25 knots, northerly 30 knots for the Alaska Peninsula, and then south of the Alaska Peninsula, southerly winds 30 knots and easterly winds for near the Sand Point region. Seas generally 6 to 11 feet north of the chain and 16 to 18 feet on the south side. On Thursday now, easterly winds 25 knots south of the Alaska Peninsula with seas 13 to 15 feet, and similar conditions north of the Alaska Peninsula, except seas a little bit calmer at 6 to 7 feet. Out over the Aleutians, expect northerly to northeasterly winds anywhere between 25 and 35 knots. Seas are generally going to be between 7 and 15 feet, and the higher gust again associated with that wind moving through the passes there over the eastern Aleutians. On into Thursday now, expect east to northerly winds anywhere between 15 and 35 knots, and seas generally will be on the order of 11 to 18 feet. For the west coast, expect north to northeasterly winds 25 to 35 knots, and seas along the ice edge there and off into the Pribilofs 7 to 13 feet with some freezing spray along the ice edge. Freezing spray will continue on into Thursday with northeast easterly winds 35 to 40 knots, and again seas between 8 and 14 feet. On to the Arctic coast now, expect northerly winds along the northwest capes becoming westerly. And then on into Thursday, most areas on the western side will be northerly winds and then westerly 15 to 20 knots for the northern shore. So tonight's forecast, once again, bear in mind we do have those winter weather warnings and advisories out for the central portions of the interior. Most of those are in effect until 4 p.m. Wednesday for the eastern portions, and then later on into Thursday for the western portions. Thanks for joining us this evening.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.